Millionaire left his wife before the birth. She woke to a doctor holding twins and flowers for a proposal. Welcome, my dear friends and family. I'm so grateful you're here, truly. You're not just viewers, you are my love, my family. Without your support, I am nothing. From the bottom of my heart, I pray that this story fills your days with hope, warmth, and the courage to believe in second chances. Get ready for a journey of love, heartbreak, and healing that will touch your soul. But before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you watching me from today? Please let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Alcott Stories channel. Together, we're building something beautiful, and I can't wait to share more heartfelt stories with you. Thank you for being here. Christopher Moore walked into every room like he owned it, not just because he did, but because he knew how to make the world pause when he smiled. His success wasn't born only from business savvy, but from a magnetic charm that made people lower their guard, especially women. At 30, with a chiseled jaw, neatly styled golden hair, and eyes the shade of an angry sea, he was the kind of man who seemed carved by ambition itself. Headlines loved him, social media adored him, and the women who worked under him whispered about him with a blend of awe and danger. He had never believed in love, just the thrill of chase, the fun of flirtation, the power in knowing he could have anyone and leave without strings. That's what made Amara Johnson such a surprise. She arrived like a breeze on a hot afternoon, calm, cool, and unknowingly disarming. Amara wasn't flashy or loud. Her presence didn't scream for attention, but it always got it, with flawless dark skin that glowed like honey in the sun and deep brown eyes that held stories no one had heard. She had a quiet elegance that drew Christopher in faster than he was ready for. Her laugh didn't flirt, it invited warmth. Her eyes didn't flirt, they questioned. And her heart, oh, her heart wasn't a game. But Christopher didn't believe that yet. To him, she was a curiosity, a challenge, a breath of something different in his predictable world of yes women. He began with little things, smiling longer, asking if she wanted coffee when he returned from his own trip to the lounge, brushing against her shoulder accidentally as he reached for a file. When she blushed the first time he complimented her perfume, it fueled his ego more than he expected. "You're something else, Amara," he said one late evening as they both stayed behind for a project deadline. She looked up from her screen, surprised by the softness in his voice. "I've never met someone like you." She lowered her eyes, unsure whether to be flattered or afraid. "You barely know me," she replied, voice steady but guarded. He leaned closer. "But I want to." That night began the unraveling. He started inviting her to lunch meetings that weren't really about meetings. He laughed more when she was around. He watched her walk down the hallway with a glint of mischief in his eyes. Amara tried to stay professional, but her defenses slowly melted under the subtle kindnesses. Doors held open, texts that made her smile before bed, flowers anonymously left on her desk. Each gesture seemed small but carefully placed. She didn't realize he was drawing her into his orbit with practiced precision. One night, after an especially long meeting, he suggested dinner. It was in a quiet, candlelit place with soft jazz playing, and he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. That evening turned into 3 more, each one more romantic than the last, each ending closer to temptation. She didn't know how to protect herself from a man who looked at her like he saw her soul, even if all he really saw was the thrill of a new game. To her, it felt like destiny pulling her towards something tender, something lasting. To him, it was a beautifully played hand. Amara wasn't foolish. She knew the risks of falling for someone like Christopher Moore, but even the wisest hearts can make the most dangerous exceptions. And Christopher, with every calculated glance, Every lingering touch was playing with matches near her dreams. She told herself not to fall, but the ground beneath her had already disappeared. She laughed with him, shared secrets over wine, leaned into the warmth of his presence, unaware that behind that dazzling smile there was no anchor of intention, only the restless sea of a man who never learned how to stay. For Amara, it was the beginning of a love she never thought she'd find. For Christopher, it was just another chapter in a story he never planned to finish. 3 dates had been all it took to change the rhythm of Amara's heart. But they also sealed her fate in ways she could never predict. After those nights cloaked in velvet sheets and soft music, the world outside their private illusion crashed in with ruthless clarity. Paparazzi, lurking like wolves, caught glimpses of the forbidden affair, Amara, leaving his penthouse in the early morning haze, Christopher's unmistakable silhouette behind her. Within hours, their faces were splashed across gossip blogs, headlines spinning rumors faster than either of them could control. Amara, a woman who built her life on integrity and hard work, suddenly found herself labeled as the secretary who seduced a millionaire, while Christopher faced the wrath of his family legacy. His parents, social titans with connections and reputations to protect, called him into a mahogany-paneled room that smelled like judgment and disappointment. His father didn't yell, he didn't need to. His cold, cutting stare carried the weight of legacy and shame. "You'll marry her, Christopher. This disgrace won't stain our name." The air was thick with silence. Christopher's voice cracked under the pressure. "But I don't love her, Dad. I never did." His mother looked away, disgusted not by the scandal, but by his irresponsibility. "Then you should have thought of that before turning her into a headline," she said, her voice like ice. Backed into a corner, Christopher agreed, not because he suddenly loved Amara, but because avoiding a public collapse meant more to him than fighting back. The wedding was planned with precision, white roses, a seaside venue, and guest lists curated like a museum exhibit. Amara wore a gown that shimmered like morning light, her smile soft but uncertain. She didn't know the conversations that happened behind closed doors, didn't hear the clipped voices demanding damage control. She only knew that Christopher stood at the altar, looking devastatingly beautiful in a tailored tuxedo, and that he was finally hers, or so she believed. When he took her hands, his fingers trembled, not from love, but from the weight of a lie growing heavier by the minute. The vows were exchanged beneath a sky that threatened rain. "Maybe we'll make this work," he whispered, lips grazing her ear like a promise. Her heart leapt, fragile and hopeful. "I already believe in us," she whispered back, because she meant every word. That night, under soft candlelight and champagne toasts, Amara floated on a cloud of new beginnings. Guests clinked glasses, photographers captured practiced smiles, and the world watched their fairy tale unfold. But inside Christopher's chest, there was no music, only the quiet ticking of obligation. Still, he played the part, dancing with her under twinkling lights, feeding her cake with laughter that wasn't quite real, holding her close, while photographers framed their embrace as love. Amara's family was small, but they cried happy tears, grateful she had found someone who looked at her with admiration, even if it was a carefully constructed illusion. That night, she traced her fingers along his shoulder, lying in bed beside the man she believed was her partner, her future. "Thank you for choosing me," she whispered. He closed his eyes, guilt pressing against his ribs. "You deserve the world, Amara," he said, and she nestled into his chest, unaware that he wasn't sure how to give even a piece of it. Over the weeks that followed, they moved into a penthouse suite that overlooked the skyline, a picture-perfect home built on uncertain ground. Amara decorated with soft pastels and fresh flowers, pouring love into every corner, while Christopher filled his schedule with meetings and events, slowly creating distance with the excuse of ambition. She left him notes in his briefcase, tucked chocolates into his coat pocket, and waited up for him with sleepy eyes and hopeful smiles. He returned her gestures with gestures, not affection, lavish gifts instead of conversations, silk scarves instead of sincerity. Still she tried. She held on to the tender moments, the stolen kisses, the mornings he lingered a little longer in bed. To her, they were building something. To him, it felt like walking deeper into a maze he didn't know how to escape. She never questioned his love, because she believed so deeply in her own. And sometimes love is a mirror. We see what we give, not what we're getting back. As spring melted into summer, Amara stood by his side at charity galas and press conferences. The perfect wife, radiant and supportive. People adored their story, beauty and success, overcoming scandal, building a life. But the truth sat quietly between them at dinner tables and in elevator rides. She didn't notice how often he looked out the window instead of into her eyes, how his touch became more routine than romantic. She believed that time would soften the edges, that maybe he just needed to trust in love the way she did. She didn't know that Christopher was already counting the days, not to grow closer, but to find a way out. At first, pregnancy was a soft light in the distance, unexpected but beautiful. Christopher had smiled when she told him, his hand finding hers with a stunned silence that felt like awe. He even knelt and kissed her belly that night, whispering words she wanted to believe were real. Amara's world burst into color. She imagined Sunday mornings with twins in matching pajamas, bedtime stories in warm arms, first steps across the hardwood floors of their elegant home. They traveled for a while, weekend getaways to coastal towns, candlelit dinners in Paris where she ordered sparkling water and he drank wine. Pretending to be content, she collected memories in a heart that only knew how to love. But beneath his designer suits and carefully curated smiles, Christopher was unraveling. The idea of fatherhood, permanence, responsibility, it clawed at the walls he had spent years building around himself. He felt the walls close in tighter with each doctor's appointment, each ultrasound picture Amara taped proudly to the fridge. He would nod, say beautiful, but his eyes never lingered. As her belly grew round and sacred, his presence grew faint and cold. Nights became lonely, even in the same bed. He stopped touching her, not cruelly, but with detachment that left her aching. She reached for him one evening, her voice breaking in the quiet. "You don't touch me like before." He didn't meet her eyes. "I've got meetings, Amara. I'm tired." She curled away, hugging the life within her, pretending it was enough. She made excuses for him, to herself, to her mother over phone calls, to friends who noticed the shadows in her smile. "He's just stressed. Big projects. He'll come around," she'd say, even though the silence at home echoed louder each day. She still left notes in his briefcase, still tried on dresses to look beautiful when he came home late, still rubbed his shoulders even when he flinched. But something was shifting, slowly, cruelly. He spent more time away, started coming home with a scent that didn't belong to her. Amara asked nothing, hoping that love was still enough to anchor them. She talked to the babies growing inside her, sang to them, painted a nursery in soft yellows and blues, hoping the colors would chase away her creeping fear. Christopher barely noticed. He'd glance inside the nursery with a tight smile, say, "Looks good," then walk away to another call. Another meeting, another lie. She found herself talking to the walls more than to her husband. The only time his hands were warm was during public appearances, smiling for cameras, placing a palm on her back like a director guiding an actress across the stage. At night, she whispered dreams to her unborn twins, promising them a father who would love them once he held them. But deep down, pieces of her heart were breaking. One night, she stood in front of the mirror, cradling her belly, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "Why does he feel so far?" she asked the reflection, but the reflection had no answers. Still, she believed, because that's what love does. It waits, it forgives, it hopes. even when it's running out of breath. She decorated the baby closet with tiny shoes and onesies he never noticed. She packed her hospital bag alone. She watched him laugh on the phone with people who seemed to matter more. The days turned heavy, the nights too quiet. Her labor came early, unexpected, in the middle of a rainy morning. She called him, her voice trembling. "It's time, Christopher. They're coming." There was a pause too long to be loving. "Now I'm in a meeting. Can someone else take you?" Her breath caught. "You're their father." "I'll see what I can do," he muttered and hung up. She stared at the screen, numb. At the hospital, she clutched her belly, pain ripping through her body, but none of it hurt as much as knowing she was doing this alone. Nurses asked for the father. She said, "He's coming," but hours passed. Her body bore the storm of birth while her heart fractured under silence. She still believed he would walk through the door. Maybe with flowers, maybe with guilt, but he never came. And Amara, still covered in sweat and tears, held her two babies against her chest and whispered, "I'm here. I'll always be here." The betrayal hadn't fully shown its face yet, but it was coming, sharp and final. The soft beeping of machines and the scent of antiseptic were the first things Amara registered as her eyelids fluttered open. Her body ached as though it had been broken and pieced together again, raw and exhausted. Then a warm weight against her side made her turn slowly, and there they were. Two tiny bundles, swaddled in hospital blankets, their faces impossibly peaceful. Her breath hitched as emotion surged through her. Love, fierce and immediate, flooded every aching corner of her. A nurse entered with a gentle smile and placed a clipboard by the bed. "Congratulations, Mama. You've got a healthy boy and girl. We just need the father's signature to finalize the documents." Those words pierced her like ice. She blinked, confused, the hope still fresh in her chest despite everything. Christopher had said he was coming. He had to be here now. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone, dialing his number like she was dialing life itself. The ringing seemed endless. Then, "Hello?" His voice was flat, too calm. "Christopher." "I had them. Our babies. Where are you?" There was silence, a pause that made her blood run cold. Then came the words that shattered everything. "Amara, stop calling me. I never wanted this. I'm not their father." Her breath caught. "What?" she whispered. "You think I didn't know?" His voice was laced with disgust. "You've been with others. Don't play the victim. You're trash." The phone slipped from her fingers as if it burned her. The nurse's voice faded into the distance. Her chest tightened, as though the air itself had betrayed her. "No, Christopher, please. Don't do this to me." Her voice cracked with desperation. But all she heard was the final blow, "Lose my number." And then the line went dead. She let out a sound no one should ever hear, a scream into her pillow, raw and filled with grief so deep it didn't sound human. Her tears soaked the hospital sheets, the weight of abandonment crushing her chest. She curled around her newborns, whispering apologies they didn't need, but her soul couldn't stop offering. "I'm sorry, babies. I'm so sorry." The nurse quietly picked up the fallen phone and stepped out, giving her space. Amara's hand shook as she held her children closer, heart pounding in terror, sorrow, disbelief. She had dreamed of him cutting the cord, holding their children, kissing her forehead with pride. Instead, he had erased them all with one cruel phone call. She looked at their tiny faces, unaware of the cruelty that had entered the world with them. And a new ache bloomed inside her, a mother's protective fire. But beneath that fire was a deep, numbing cold. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. No partner, no home, no plan. Just two fragile lives depending on her when she could barely hold herself up. The sky outside her window was a bleak gray, and the rain tapped gently against the glass like a mourning song. Her dreams had died in that hospital bed, right beside the man she once thought was her forever. And still, in the middle of that devastation, She reached out and touched their little hands. "I'm here," she whispered through trembling lips. "Even if he isn't, I'm here. I'll always be here." Her words cracked, but she repeated them like a vow. In the distance, she could hear other new mothers laughing, partners celebrating, doors opening and closing with joy. But her room stayed still, haunted by betrayal, saturated with silence. She buried her face into the soft hair of her daughter, rocked them both gently, and let herself cry harder than she ever had. No one told her how heartbreak could feel like a death. No one told her it could come in the same moment as life. And as night fell, she was still sitting there in the dark, clinging to the only light she had left. The quiet of the hospital room was suddenly broken by the soft creak of the door opening, hesitant yet deliberate, as a figure stepped inside, carrying a simple bouquet of red roses and a clipboard. His eyes, kind and steady, took in the scene. The weary woman cradling her newborn twins, her cheeks stained with fresh tears, her shoulders trembling beneath the weight of heartbreak. "I'm Dr. Daniel Whitmore," he said softly, his voice warm and gentle, yet firm enough to hold a promise of safety. Amara turned her face away, the sting of shame and despair closing her heart like a locked door. "Please, just leave me alone," she whispered, her voice barely audible, cracked with pain and exhaustion. But Daniel moved closer, sitting beside her, with a careful grace that didn't demand anything but offered everything. "You just brought two beautiful souls into this world, and you're facing it all alone." His words carried no judgment, only a deep respect for the strength it must have taken to bring life into such a storm. The walls around Amara's heart crumbled as she broke down, her sobs trembling into a fragile confession. "My husband, he left me, said the babies aren't his, called me nothing but trash." She barely met Daniel's eyes, ashamed of the truth and the betrayal carved deep in her bones. Daniel's chest tightened, a fierce protectiveness igniting inside him. "Then he's a fool," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with fire. "A man who can turn his back on this kind of beauty and courage. He doesn't deserve the name." "Man." Amara looked up, her gaze searching his, a flicker of hope piercing through the fog of despair. "What do I do now?" she whispered, the question raw, the future an empty void. "I have nothing. No home, no family, no one." Daniel reached out with a steady hand and placed one of the crimson roses gently in her palm, a small, silent promise blooming between them. "You have me," he said simply, and those words wrapped around her heart like a balm. She looked at him, unsure and scared, but beneath the surface a fragile spark began to kindle. For the first time since Christopher's betrayal, someone saw her not as broken or discarded, but as a woman worthy of love, respect, and protection. Daniel stayed by her side that evening, speaking softly about hope, strength, and the power that motherhood gave her. He listened to her fears and dreams, never rushing, never pushing, just being there, a steady presence in the storm. He helped with paperwork, spoke kindly to the nurses on her behalf, and held the babies when her arms trembled. Slowly, her world shifted from darkness to a soft dawn of possibility. Daniel promised nothing extravagant, but his kindness was real, a quiet rebellion against the cruelty she had endured. In the weeks that followed, he visited often, bringing fresh flowers, reading stories to the twins, and never crossing the line she hesitated to draw. Amara began to smile again, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. She realized that sometimes family is not born from blood, but from those who choose to stay. With Daniel, she found strength, a new beginning, and the courage to believe in love again. The shadows of the past still haunted her nights, but the red rose in her hand was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that she was not alone. And in that fragile hope, Amara took her first true breaths of freedom, ready to rebuild her life, not with the man who abandoned her, but with the one who chose to stand by her, come what may. Every day, like a steady tide washing over a wounded shore, Daniel arrived at the hospital with quiet purpose. In his hands, He carried the small necessities of life for the twins, bottles filled with milk, soft blankets woven in calming pastels, and words that felt like gentle balm to a soul torn open by betrayal. He never rushed her healing, never demanded more than she was ready to give. One afternoon, as the late sun filtered through the window, casting warm gold across the room, Amara looked up at him with vulnerability still trembling in her eyes, and asked, "Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much?" Daniel's smile was soft, touched with a wisdom born of his own scars. "Because love isn't always where we expect it," he said quietly. "But when it finds us, even in the darkest places, we shouldn't run from it. Sometimes love is the courage to stand when the world has knocked you down." Those words settled over her like a promise whispered by the wind. Slowly, the fog of pain began to lift, replaced by fragile moments of joy. Amara found herself smiling, not the forced kind, but the true warmth that blooms when the heart starts to heal. Lily's laughter filled the room like sunlight through stained glass, and Elijah's wide eyes held wonder and trust. Daniel cradled them as if they were the most precious treasures in existence, and in those moments, he was their father, not by blood but by heart. The days blurred softly together as the seasons changed. Spring gave way to summer, and Amara's life, once shattered, began to weave itself into something new and beautiful. She found strength in her own reflection, in the echo of laughter from the twins, and in Daniel's unwavering presence. One afternoon, beneath the wide-open sky of a quiet park, Daniel knelt down on trembling knees, holding out the same red rose he had given her months ago in the hospital. His voice was steady, but filled with hope and reverence. "You gave life to them, Amara. Let me give a life to you. Marry me. Let's build something real, something true." Tears welled and spilled freely down her cheeks, a mixture of relief, love, and the raw power of second chances. Her heart overflowed, and with a voice cracked with emotion, she whispered, "Yes, Daniel." 1,000 times yes. In that moment, beneath the shade of blooming trees and the wide embrace of the sky, Amara understood what it meant to be seen, cherished, and chosen. The past, though painful, had carved space for a future bathed in hope. She no longer feared the shadows because she had found a light that would never leave her side. Daniel reached out, slipping the ring onto her finger, a circle without end, symbolizing their journey from brokenness to wholeness. They stood together, hands entwined, hearts beating in sync with a promise, whispered between two souls destined to heal each other. Life, with all its unpredictable twists, had brought them here, not just to survive, but to thrive. And as the twins gurgled happily in Daniel's arms, Amara felt the steady pulse of love beating through every fiber of her being. The wounds of yesterday still lingered, but they were no longer chains. They were reminders of strength, of courage, of a woman who refused to be broken. With Daniel, with her children, and with a heart reborn, she stepped forward into the dawn of a new beginning, one filled with love, forgiveness, and the endless possibility of happiness. Years had passed since the storm of betrayal and heartbreak had first shattered Amara's world, yet the grand mansion that once echoed with cold silence and the weight of abandoned promises was now alive, bursting with the vibrant symphony of laughter, joy, and unwavering love. The twins, Lily and Elijah, now toddlers, chased each other across sun-dappled floors, their innocent giggles filling every corner with warmth, their small hands reaching out to Daniel and Amara as they built a life together, one stitched not with bloodlines, alone, but with boundless devotion and chosen family. Daniel, with his gentle eyes and steadfast heart, had officially adopted the twins, sealing a bond that was never about biology but about the fierce, tender love that had blossomed in the darkest of times. Amara, radiant and strong, had grown beyond the shadows that once haunted her, carving a new path as the successful owner of a design studio that pulsed with creativity, ambition, and her unique vision. Daniel was her rock, her unwavering support, her partner in every dream, every struggle, every triumph. Together, they had transformed pain into power, fear into faith, and loss into hope. Meanwhile, Christopher, the man who once held her, heart like a fragile glass only to shatter it, had attempted to return like a ghost from the past. But Amara was no longer a prisoner of his cruelty. She never sought closure because she had already embraced her future, a future filled with real love, respect, and endless possibility. One quiet evening, under a sprawling sky painted with the soft glow of countless stars, Amara sat on the porch, wrapped in Daniel's steady hand, the calm rhythm of his heartbeat syncing with her own. Her voice was soft, trembling with a truth she had never dared admit aloud until now. "I thought I'd lost everything," she confessed, the weight of her journey echoing in her words. Daniel smiled, his gaze tender and filled with unshakable certainty. "No, love," he whispered, his voice a gentle anchor in the night. "You were just being led to me." In that moment, as the night wrapped around them like a warm embrace, the world felt infinite and kind, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the redemptive power of love that finds us when we least expect it. The mansion stood as a monument not to what had been lost, but to what had been found, a sanctuary of second chances, of healing, and of dreams realized. Through tears and trials, Amara had risen stronger, wiser, and braver than ever before. The twins' laughter was the sweetest music she had ever known, and Daniel's love was the greatest gift she had ever received. They had created a family not born from convenience or obligation, but forged in the fires of true connection and unbreakable commitment. Every morning dawned with promise, every night closed with gratitude, and every heartbeat was a celebration of the journey from heartbreak to happiness. Together, they planted seeds of love deep in the soil of their lives, watching as a garden of hope flourished in the light of their shared future. The past, once a heavy chain, had been transformed into wings, lifting them higher, carrying them beyond pain, beyond fear, to a place where love was not just a fleeting feeling, but an unyielding force that would never let go. And beneath that vast, star-studded sky, Amara and Daniel knew that no matter what storms might come, they would face them side by side, stronger, unbreakable, and forever bound by the beautiful second chance they had found together.